Good morning. Thank you for waking up from last night's partying. So today we have a special guest from Rome. So we're very honored. So his name is Dr. L.Giorgini. He's a psychiatrist, individual and group psychotherapist, and a developmental psychologist. He finished his PhD program in early interventions in psychosis and mood disorders at the University of Rome Sapienza. Sapienza. So he's a co-leader of the Special Interest Group on Psychotherapy for Youth and Mental Health of the World Psychiatric Association section of Psychotherapy for Youth Mental Health of the also for the World Psychiatric Association members. His theoretical framework is basically human birth theory by Massimo Fagioli and psychotherapeutic training based in participation in collective analysis. He has worked in hospitals in Rome and its provinces and now works as a consultant in public and medical services in Rome. In public service, he is currently the head of the Youth Mental Health and for early diagnosis and treatment for eating disorders, and is a practicing group psychotherapist for body image disorders. For more than 15 years, he's been working in private practice as a psychotherapist with transdiagnostic groups. And for 5 years, he's a psychiatrist head of the Rehabilitation Metabolic Nutritional Service for eating disorders and obesity in the clinic of Villa Duelie in Nemi, Rome. He's also a research fellow of the University of Rome Sapienza in studies of sarcopenic obesity. He was a member of the Eating Disorders Committee of the Order of Doctors and Surgeons of Rome, as well as a volunteer consultant with the Medical Association Doctors Against Torture, involving medical and psychological assistance for refugee torture victims. Since 2010, he has been a teacher of psychiatry and psychopathology at the University of Rome, different mental health centers with ongoing CME courses, and psychoanalytic psychotherapy school of Caetano. He also reviews the Beatles Journal of Psychiatry, is an editorial committee member in an Italian news magazine entitled Left, and scientific consultant for the publisher El Asino di Oro. He's also an author of many publications, mainly on psychopathology, psychotherapy, developmental age, psychosis, and body image disorders, as well as numerous books like Anorexia, Eating Disorders, published in 2017, and Dysmorphophobia, When Seeing Yourself as Ugly Becomes a Pathology, also published in 2017 in Italy. He's also an editor of the new edition of Interpretation of Schizophrenia by Silviano Aretti. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Dr. L.Giorgini.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me here and for yesterday evening party. And thank you to Vanessa Milan that asked me to do this lecture. And doesn't work. Maybe, yes. And Vanessa asked me to talk about my work as a group psychotherapist, especially with young people. And to do this, first I have to tell you something about my background for better understanding. Okay, it disappeared again. Okay. Yes, this one. Thank you. And yes, something about background. Okay. My personal history with the group psychotherapy started many years ago, and it is closely linked to the story of the collective analysis seminars that were large group sessions of psychotherapy. That was also an occasion of research and training. I took part in this training activity as participant for about 30 years. Yes. Now? No. Yes. Okay. This picture is a big event in the University of Rome, Sapienza. My working experience with groups, my first working experience were with rehabilitation and socializing groups. At the beginning, I worked with as a social health operator with a gardening group and with a book binding group in a psychiatric community and in a daycare center. Then, during my specialization, I conduct a group aiming to improve medicine compliance with inpatient and outpatient, and other drawing group where I try to interpret drawings from paintings of patients. Talking more specifically about group psychotherapy, I start to work with groups in 2007 in my private practice, and this original group continues up to now, even if almost all the patients have changed. It is important to immediately underline that a specific group of psychotherapy has its specific image that is linked to its history, and we have to consider this specificity because it is an essential object of the transference. Now I conduct a weekly group of 15 people. It is an open and heterogeneous group. Patients are different in age, gender, diagnosis, and severity. In fact, the decision to put a new member into the group does not depend on the clinical severity, but much more on the fact that they are capable or not of undergoing group psychotherapy, which mostly depends on their capability to keep having a non-conscious relationship with me, also in group situation. I also work in a public office in a metropolitan area of Rome. Here I am the head of the service of adult disorder, as just told. And also a group, I conduct a group specifically oriented to the treatment of body image disorders. That means eating disorder and dysmorphophobia. Also here, the diagnosis and severity are not strictly inclusion criteria. Okay. As I mentioned before, my theoretical background stems from my personal history with group psychotherapy within the collective analysis seminars, which were regular weekly sections of psychotherapy with a huge group of more than 150 participants, which was contextually an occasion of research and training. Here in the slide, you can see a detail of the place where collective analysis seminars were held. And there are also some sculptures from Fagioli. Collective analysis was not only a unique healing opportunity for thousands of people since the middle 70s until 3 years ago, but also the place where many psychotherapists were trained directly by Professor Fagioli, the author of Human Birth Theory, that is our theoretical background. This group of more than 200 psychotherapists has a reference journal, Il sogno della farfalla, The Butterfly's Dream, an official publish house, L'Asino d'Oro, The Golden Donkey, and a school of psychotherapy, Biopsyche. While collective analysis can be seen as a unique form of macrogroup psychotherapy, human birth theory specifically emphasizes the relevance of group psychotherapy. Indeed, group psychotherapy can better respond to the natural society of human beings than traditional individual psychotherapy. Moreover, given the increasingly widespread demand for psychotherapy, group psychotherapy allows the delivery of more effective treatment to more people. Also, it allows for treating lower socioeconomic groups and can be implemented in countries with less economic resources. Human birth theory has been explained by its author in many articles, publications, and more than 25 books. The first, that instinct and knowledge, now can be found in English. You could have something, except if you want to hear. Yes. In our approach, the psychotherapy is based on three essential features: setting, transference, and interpretation, which, however, have a very different meaning from the classic psychoanalysis. Let's start with some definition and then I will explain you better further on. Setting, it meant the well-defined spatial and time boundaries of the psychotherapy sessions, which have to be stable and constant. Doesn't work. Yes. Thank you very much. Transference refers to the complete physician-patient relationship. For us, it takes on a new meaning. If there is a transference onto the therapist of the experience and affection gone through in the past, this means that the present relationship with the therapist is annulled. In fact, it is seen as the repetition of previous experiences, and it means that these experiences have not been unconsciously imaged up, and up to the point of creating an internal image. So the therapist will not have to passively accept being seen, for example, as a father, but will have to interpret the annulment of the present reality of the therapist. Interpretation is through verbalizing, making the content that is related to the patient's communication evident, being either dreams or facts or conscious thought, up to revealing what the patient is effectively thinking at an unconscious level. At the same time, it means frustrating and opposite what the communication does not correspond to the truth, because it results from a distortion of the reality triggered by the annular pulsion, which, as we will see, is the pathogenic mechanism of mental illness. Sentient transference and interpretation are the essential pillars of the psychotherapy based on human birth theory, which is coherent with the human birth theory central principles, which are: there is a physiology of human thinking that emerges at birth as a cerebral reaction to light. This initial neural reaction as the psychic form of the so-called disappearing fantasy. This original physiological condition of health can be lost, potentially leading to a level mental illness if during development children are exposed to violent and disappointing relationships. Healing through psychotherapy means recreating the original healthy state in which all of us entered the world. Now I will discuss in detail each of these principles. Human birth theory asserts the existence of a physiology of human thinking that emerges at birth as a reaction of the cerebral mother to light. Concretely, while the fetus that is immersed in the amniotic fluid is in a fundamentally stable homeostatic balance, the baby just coming into the world is suddenly overexposed to a multitude of stimuli: cold, noise, and especially light. Light is a new stimulus that instantly activates the brain via retinal cortex projections. While this sequence was advanced by Fagioli in the 70s, several years later, research progress in neonatology, and especially in the work of Professor Gatti, confirmed the corresponding neurobiological dynamic, showing how at birth light causes important neurobiological changes that immediately determine the cortical arousal and activation of all cerebral cortex. According to human birth theory, the early neural reaction to light as the psychic form of the so-called disappearance fantasy. That is, the newborn makes the external world, which is perceived as aggressive and intrusive, disappear, and at the same time it creates the image of the experience of the prenatal condition when the fetus was immersed in the amniotic fluid. Therefore, the very first thought is the newborn capability to imagine. The newborn imagines to distinct the dark and distinct warmth of the amnios. This capability to imagine creates the memory of the sensation the fetus receives in the womb, that they are linked to kinesthetic and cutaneous stimuli. This memory allows the newborn to sense that they are not alone, having the certainty that the breath exists, another human being to relate to and who is able to satisfy their needs for love, as well as their physical needs. So they are able to develop. Therefore, human birth theory recognizes, as well as birth, the child's capability to think through undefined images. This allows the child to relate to and know how the external reality with their own subjectivity. In other words, as well as birth, human beings are endowed with a healthy mental reality that needs satisfying relationship with other person in order to develop physiologically. However, this original physiological condition can be lost, thus leading to the onset of the illness
at a later stage if, during development, children are exposed to a violent and disappointing relationship. Even when their physical needs are satisfied, eating, drinking, warmth, etc., their natural desire for love and interest from their caregivers may not be fulfilled. Thus, children may react with the annulment pulsion. That is, a non-conscious dynamic where the other human being and the relevant relationship are made to disappear, become non-existent in their mind, as if they had never existed. The child will no longer feel the anxiety or anger deriving from disappointment, and at the same time will partially lose their affectivity. For psychotherapy to actually heal an illness, it must recreate the original healthy state in which all of us enter the world. This can be done by proposing to the patient a valid and non-disappointing relationship where the understanding of non-conscious and prevailing thinking and of the images of dream is sought. The patients will thus be able to comprehend that their being ill is a symptom of a disease rather than an existential condition inherent to human nature. A disease linked to the loss of a previously healthy mental state. Therefore, the psychotherapist will have to highlight every time how the non-lament pulsion changes the patient's ability to relate to others. So in other words, psychotherapists will not passively accept that the patient relates to them as if they were a different person, the father, the mother, but will interpret the annulment of the therapist's reality. The patients will be able to increasingly perceive their own relationship with the other's reality, not only on the basis of consciousness and behavior, but also on deep affection, sensitivity, and emotions. Thus, the fundamental element of psychotherapy is the patient-physician relationship and its quality. This relationship takes place within well-defined spatial and time boundaries of psychotherapy session, being stable and constant. That's what we call setting. Fagioli's first book, That Instinct and Knowledge, actually begins with the observation of how, during summer holidays, the patient can react to the analyst's physical absence with the annulment pulsion, thus making the analyst and the session unconsciously disappear. In the specific group psychotherapy setting, the presence of more than one person in the group frustrates the omnipotence of the single one, who will not be able to annul the session that is being held, even if some patients are missing. Overall, it becomes more difficult for patients to put a control mechanism into effect, that is, to impede the progress of the therapy. The whole work becomes more complex. For example, each patient will choose where to sit and thus the right distance from the therapist. Then, regarding the second word, transference, within group psychotherapy section, at first we have to consider this. Patients will have to deal with the communication from others, which issues and dynamics that also concern them may emerge, but which they may have avoided at an unconscious level. The group provides a more varied number of ideas. Each patient will have to develop a relationship with the more complex reality of the therapist, because they will have also to deal with the therapist's interaction with a reaction to communication coming from another. Regarding the third word, interpretation, therapist verbal communication is mainly, but not only, centered on the interpretation of dreams. Patients usually perceive that dreams can also be of interest of the others, as being a thought through images, and not a concrete event. They have a general character and also have several layers of meaning, as for example, a painting. Through interpretation, the therapist reveals pathological dynamics. To do this, the therapy does not use a perceived knowledge, but their own fantasy, placing themselves in affective relationship with the patient. Thus, the therapist shows how the rapport with non-conscious thinking is possible. Often, the first effect of a psychotherapy is actually the reappearance of dreams they didn't remember before. Within the group, each patient is stimulated to realize that what is therapeutic is often not so much speaking as it is learning how to listen. The interpretation that is given to a single patient is used by the whole group, as every patient may partially or entirely recognize themselves in it. We can also say the group is definitely not the sum of single individuals. Instead, it has its own identity, in that rather than flattening, each individual identity is enhanced in one's personal way of relating to the therapist and the group. The outcome is an image of the therapist and of the group itself that is more varied and free. Transference changes in group therapy. Climate changes. Other patients also play a witness role. They see the physician-patient relationship and the presence of more people at the session as more relative, giving them a more concrete and real sense. This often results in a reduction of interferences. It, for example, can allow the patient's acceptance of some interpretation that he or she could not ever tolerate in an individual setting. Then, now, I would like to say something more specific about psychotherapy with adolescents and young adults. Adolescence is an eventful period in one's life with transition from infancy to adulthood, when young people find themselves facing a change, both physically and mentally, which gives rise to a new whole adult identity. Facing these changes can lead to a crisis that is expressed through suffering, which, however, should not be confused with an illness. It is important to recognize the physiological nature of this crisis, which allows adolescents to develop into a new reality. Therefore, psychiatrists who work with young people should know how to distinguish malaise, the expression of a physiological crisis, from the first symptoms of a mental illness. To do this, Human Birth Theory by Massimo Fagioli offers an important tool. In the first place, it indeed offers a model to understand the physiological development of the human mental reality, and second, it sets the very moment when human thinking first appears at birth as disappearance fantasy. As already said before, the reaction to light stimulus at birth takes the form of a fantasy, the disappearance fantasy, which makes the external world that the newborn perceives as aggressive disappear, and at the same time creates the mental image of being in the maternal womb, the previous situation of complete homeostasis. This image or better, this capability to imagine, is the first thinking activity. After birth, in order for the newborn to develop physiologically over and above the satisfaction of the body's primary needs, it's fundamental for them to perceive the quality of an affectionate relationship with their caregivers. If the child's demand for love is satisfied, a physiological development follows, where few fundamental steps can be identified: birth, breastfeeding, perception of one's own face in the mirror, weaning, perception of a human being who differs from oneself, adolescence, and relationship with a different human being. It should be underlined that while it is assumed that at the birth and throughout the first year of life there is a complete fusion between physical reality and psychic reality, when language starts to be articulated and also structuring of consciousness starts, the non-conscious world is set aside. At puberty, due to the changes, this psychic reality of the first year of life re-emerges and as during the first year of life, merges with the physical reality that now is changing. Sensuality appears. And the non-conscious world, the mental reality of the first months of life, is brought into play within affectionate relationship with other human beings. Indeed, men and women are the same, in that they are human beings. However, at the same time, they are profoundly different. This same but different oxymoron cannot be solved in pure rational terms. For instance, in order to be able to relate with this irreducibility, a preverbal irrational relationship is needed, as it was the case in the first years of one's own life. Indeed, the other human being represents this preverbal reality of the first year of life, which was left behind, and becomes an unknown and irreducibly different reality to which to relate physically and mentally. As we mentioned earlier, at birth, once the newborn's identity is realized by the separation from the mother, hope certainty that the breath exists emerges. Meaning, hope certainty that another human being exists who can satisfy the newborn's requirements for love, apart from physical needs. During adolescence, this dimension can be found in the search of another human being who will represent the unknown dimension of the first year of life. But if this person disappoints the desire, then the adolescent may become ill, which may also occur if the parents show indifference towards or anger against the adolescent's new identity. Indeed, it is during adolescence that mental disorders usually develop. However, young people who show the first symptoms are those who reach adolescence unprepared, with an inner image that was already being compromised. Due to this fragility, it is essential not to have new disappointing experiences. In fact, many times adults do not know how to react or deal with young people's difficulties and tend to judge them, claiming they are indolent, bad-mannered, etc. And finally, experiencing a crisis in themselves before their children's changes. Breakups, betrayed by a friend, and a lot of other experiences are further disappointment which add to those the child has already experienced during their first year of life. A relationship with caregivers where the child's requirements for love and care are not satisfied, despite material needs being met, causes anxiety in the child. The child may react by making the relationship itself disappear, by means of an unconscious pathological dynamic that is called annulment pulsion. This makes the disappointing relationship disappear in the child's mind, thus making it non-existent as if it had never existed. However, this is not the truth. There was first a disappointing relationship, which, however, now no longer hurts, because the child has made the affection linked to it disappear, thus partially turning it non-affective. The repetition of disappointing relationship and of the annulment pulsion can lead to the loss of the possibility to actually see human reality in depth and relate to the non-conscious world of affection. This is how the mind, thus compromised, reaches the turmoil of the adolescent. And its merging with a changing body does not occur or is not harmonic. For instance, it may happen that the mind attacks the body, as in the case of eating disorder or with self-inflicted injuries or suicide. We maintain that psychotherapy for adolescents should not follow any different approach or procedure from psychotherapy for adult patients. This is because even if symptoms in adolescents can sometimes have more striking features, they are linked to the same psychic pathological dynamics as in an adult. Setting, transfer, and interpretation are the same. What differs is the psychotherapeutic relationship with adolescent patient. Psychotherapy hinges on the non-conscious relationship between the physician and the patient, where two different realities come face to face and clash. The psychotherapist must know how to interpret the annulment pulsion of the patient who will challenge their abilities. The psychotherapist will have to be able to make the patient see how interhuman relationships do not have to be disappointing, and that a relationship with the non-conscious world of affection and images is possible. The psychotherapist should not make any attempt to shape the patient based on their own ideal or pseudo-educative model, but rather interpret and unveil what is wrong, the illness. Once the illness has been healed, patients regain their whole original healthy state at birth. This will let them express their own originality. Now, at this point, I think that it could be important to highlight that the direct consequences of annulment pulsion, which are what causes the profound distortion of relationship with the others as a consequence of annulment pulsion, because it could take two different forms: annulment and negation. Annulment. Here, the annulment pulsion makes the relationship disappear as if it had never existed before. It is as if the other doesn't exist anymore because he or she has disappeared at an emotional level. In psychotherapy, it can happen, for example, that the patient makes an annulment of the psychotherapist. then he or she could dream, for instance, to be in front of an empty chair. The patient knows at a conscious level that the therapist is in front of him or her, but at the same time, the dream indicates how the therapist doesn't exist anymore at an effective level. Indeed, the consequence of annulment passion is the loss of affection, which in Italian we call anaffettività. That is, a lack of affection. I would like to underline that we must distinguish it from indifference. Indifference is when I'm not interested in something, that is, I don't care about horse racing, astrology, or skiing. Anaffettività is an absence of affections, a pathologically violent dimension caused by annulment passion. It refers to the relationship with human reality and not with things. However, it must be distinguished from sadism, that refers to the destruction of material things. Instead, in affettività, nothing is destroyed. The human mental reality is made inexistent. Then, negation. Negation is an unconscious dynamic that deforms negatively and in a worse way the object's qualities, particularly the psychic ones. Consequently, for example, a person can be represented in a dream as being less clever or stupid, less emotional and colder, less intuitive and active, or just low and passive, less generous and honest, and so on. Negation in a dream distorts and destroys the other's qualities. It expresses violence that is not a physical destruction. It is directed against the relationship. Negation is not a lie. A lie is a conscious dimension where I say something that I know to be false. Negation instead regards an unconscious deformation of reality, detectable through, but not only, dream interpretation. For example, a patient could dream of me as a small person. In this case, the alteration of physical reality in the dreams could express a way to represent a lack of on the emotional side. The representation as not being tall means, in that case, not being clever, short in thoughts, or affective, short in emotions. Negation and annulment are non-conscious dynamics that could be structured as relationship dynamics. If repeated and pervasive, they could determine mental illness. Clearly, with the progress in the therapy, qualitatively different images can emerge in dreams. The psychotherapist could be represented, for example, as a hairdresser. Hair grows on the head as ideas do. The patients could express, in this way, the thought that there is a person who cut their unwanted hair. That means the old ideas to allow the new ones to grow. Dreaming of a dog could represent the fact that the patient recognizes some qualities in their therapist. As a dog, the therapist waits for the patient to come back every week. He or she is faithful and is always there when the patient is there. Indeed, a therapist's representation as a cat could express the idea that he has a degree of independence and freedom that lack to the patient. Moreover, the psychotherapeutic process could be represented as making bread. To make bread, you have to choose different ingredients, mix them. Okay, you have rice, not bread, but the same. Uh, Mix them, leave the dough to rise for some time, and then bake it in the head of the oven. At the end, the final result, the bread, is something completely different to the ingredients we began with, and no longer recognizable with the end product. The same happens in psychotherapy. The idea of a cure that aims at healing the illness involves a process of transformation in the individuals who becomes a different person to what they were at the beginning. Clearly, this requires the time and the interest of the therapist, the head of the oven that makes the bread rise. So, summing up, mental illness is understood as the result of an unconscious dynamic that can be studied. Consequently, mental illness is treatable through a psychotherapeutic relationship that aims to modify the non-conscious dynamics. Indeed, we believe that dealing with non-conscious reality and dreams is part of our job. Dreams are a way of thinking, a thinking in images. The dream is not the reproduction of conscious reality. The dream is not a conscious remembering, because the image is transformed by imagination and mental reality of the dreamer. The psychiatrist's task is to distinguish true dreams from the false one. That means he or she has to interpret annulment and negation. Dream interpretation gives us the knowledge about our non-conscious world and frustrates the pathological reaction, that is, the false interpretation of reality. So dream interpretation can recreate that original healthy state of when we were born. In fact, pulsion in presence of vitality can be directed no longer towards others, but towards our own pathological dimension, making them disappear. So, in conclusion, the objective of psychotherapy is therefore to heal the illness, to recreate the physiological condition of the mind, which we all enter the world with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Giorgini, for that interesting lecture. Dr. Giorgini, I'm Dr. Vanessa Caingo. I am the training officer of the section of child psychiatry here at the Medical City. I can see that we have guests from other institutions. Can you identify yourself? I see PGH. Can you raise your hands? No PGH? Okay, from what institution po kayo?
Academic.
Makati, the ones at the back.
Here's a page.
Saan?
Here's a page.
It's the PGH. Okay, so it's just Makati.
University.
USC.
And UST, I'm so happy to see you. Okay, Dr. Giorgini and I are co-leaders in a special interest group of the WPA, and that is psychotherapy for the youth. And I was amazed at your lecture because you integrated the theories of human birth theory and that of Dr. Fagioli into group therapy. Because I know that group therapy is very difficult and complicated because it is different from our individual therapy. And I wanted my fellows here at TMC and in the other institutions to learn something from this lecture. So I'd like to have the privilege of asking him the first question. So I know that in a group therapy, you do not deal with the individual personalities of the participants. So how do you make the group cohesive, and how do you form the identity of the group eventually if the participants have various come from various disorders, ages, groups.
Okay. I think that the therapist, that it's not necessary that the therapist form the image, the group. The group has itself an image. The therapist have to reply to what people in front of him or her is asked. I think that also uh, if people are different in age, gender, or severity, the pathological dimensions and the pathological dynamics are the same. I try to explain with some examples of these two forms that can assume in another pulsion in dreams. And these dimensions are the real identity of the patients. Because even if some patients are, a patient is rich and another is poor, what counts at the end is the qualities of the relationship, and it is based not on how rich is it, but how he is able to relate to the others. And you can see this in a better way if you live apart, if you set aside behavior and conscious thought. Because in conscious, every patient wants to cure himself. But if it was true, he could choose a different relationship where he could get better. In reality, often, not to say always, the patient choose the bad relationship and stay always in a worse way. So, we have to deal with what he is thinking beyond the consciousness. And we can see it, for example, with the dream interpretation, not only, but trying to relate to what the patient is thinking in the depth, so at an unconscious level.
Sir, I would just like to react with that wonderful lecture. At first, I was really over my head because the concepts are very hard to grasp. But when you're doing clinical practice, it makes sense already. My first question, sir, is how do you do the group psychotherapy? Is it like a limited session or like a...
No, thank you. No, it's not a limited section. I think that it's not possible to think before how long could be the process of healing. Sometimes it needs some years, relatively not so much, but in other situations it needs more time, more maybe some years. And I think that it depends on how the patient-physician relationship goes on. And so it could, I could not decide before.
It's very flexible, sir, right? Yeah. My second question, sir, is, if I may, I'm just curious, is the patient or the member of the group developing transference towards the therapist, or also the group members are developing?
It's clear that every patient deal with also the identity of the group and the identity of the single members of the group. But transference is, for definition, related to the therapist. So we try to understand that it's clear that also other patients, what the other patient think, what the other patient say about the therapy or about their personal relationship with what happened in their life could influence another person in the group. And but this changes how the patient relate to the therapist, so the transference in this meaning. So I have to manage also with this. And also when I interpret the dream of a patient, the other could react to this. And because, for example, a patient could dream something of important or could realize something of importance in their life. And if the other patient could not have to do this, could react in a bad way. So, I think that the important is how this reaction, I am able to use this reaction to put in the relationship with me and to cure the patient. So the group therapy could, in group therapy, more ideas emerges more than in individual therapy, in my experience. And so it can become more faster, more quickly. You have to change from a patient to another. And so this capability to do this is something to which also the patient has to relate to. So I don't know if can I explain, but also when something important is in a dream or in a communication of one patient, the other patient reacts to this, but react through the therapist, not on. Okay.
Thank you, sir. We are open for more questions from the other institutions.
Doctor, good morning po. Doctor, which patient population subset would most benefit from group therapy? From your experience for doctor?
No, I can be there.
Sorry. Which patient population subset would most benefit from group therapy?
In my experience, yes. In many occasions in my work life, I think that that patient could not benefit more from an individual relationship. Also because individual psychotherapy recreates the same situation where the illness grows up. Because if we suppose that the illness is not genetic, as all new studies show, there is something happens in the relationship. And when? In which relationship? The relationship when the patient is really it's a child. So with the person who cares, who take care of him. So normally it's the mother, but could be also a man, also a father, or a different person. But in this in this situation is normally a situation where are involved two persons, and it's the same that in individual psychotherapy. So, so often individual psychotherapy reach a point where the patient could not go further on, because I think also if but he tried to put into effect this mechanism. You are the mother of the father of, and so it's a situation that could not reach another point. So changing this situation in a group psychotherapy is more, it's better. Also because, how I try to explain, one of the fundamental mechanisms of illness is annulment pulsion. If the therapist is in the room, but the patient isn't, the patient could, the therapy, there is no therapy in individual setting. In a group setting, the therapy is on. So, this can fight the patient's omnipotence to annul the psychotherapy.
Thank you.
Have more questions?
How about our students? Do you have questions? What Dr. Luca gave us a look into what the psychiatrist does in group psychotherapy.
Dr. Giorgini, first of all, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. I had a question regarding the concept of non-impulsion. Just clarifying, so is it similar to sort of thought suppression as a response to, for example, traumatic relationships? Or...
Yes, I try to say it's clear that there are some things that maybe the patient doesn't want to say in a group situation, and it's clear. But if we talk about an abuse or something like that, could be necessary at first moment when you see the patient in individual therapy. But, however, I have had, for example, some patients that didn't tell me anything about this for many years. Then I understand it with the dreams, with some dreams. And so he could manage also something like that, really not easy to talk in group. I manage it in group, and we, the patient, manage it in group, and then they overcome it.
We have one more question, sir.
Yes.
Good morning, sir. I'm
Good morning.
Dean from Medical City. I have sort of like clarification from you because we're talking about dreams, interpretation of dreams. And is there any difference or similarities when we're talking also about Freud's interpretation of dreams in comparison with fragility. Like Freud is talking about residuals, or when it comes to dreams, like we'll talk about residuals, hallucinations, we'll talk about certain like latent and manifest. Is it the same with fragility, and how do we parang apply that in terms of group therapy? Is it more on psychoanalytic also, same with Freud? So,
No, it is completely different. Freud talks about instinct, it's right. And in human birth theory, instincts don't exist. Because instinct is something that animals have. It's a preconceived and a preordinated behavior. As the bear that go in to a want claiming it. And the people are different. People have a choice always. And passion is something that is a completely different concept. Is the first passion is at birth as a reaction to the behavior, in particular to light stimulus, and creates the first thought. In Freud theory, there is no first thought at birth. Freud said that even if there is something something happen at birth, it is without importance. And so I ask you if there is no importance and it's the same from the fetus and from a newborn. Why in the most part of the world interruption of pregnancy is possible, and in never part of the world you can kill a child. Second, why if the newborn isn't have no thought, when a thinking starts? When how ancient Greek said at 7 years age old, and before, where is? And from where comes the thought? Because human birth theory say that dreams is start from birth as this reaction to the light from biological matter, as is before, emerges a new dimension that is a psychic one. So the first thinking is non-conscious thinking, and non-conscious thinking is the real dimension that distinguishes us from animals. It's not as always they say that we are different because we are rational. It's completely different, because if you see how fight a lion, or how they are really rational. They choose the best situation where they can use less economic and less spend less forces, less resources to get the better result. I think that it is a good choice for a manager. And that is good, but I never saw a lion drawing or painting. Did you? And so our specificity is in non-rational world, not in rational world. Rational is nothing bad, it's good, but it's not the only reality. our specificity is in a more rational world.
If we don't have any further questions, maybe we can share to you sort of what we do in Medical City in terms of group therapy.
Yes, thank you.
So this is what we do. This is actually a brainchild of one of our graduates, first graduates in child and adolescent psychiatry, Dr. Calleja. So it's a titled group therapy for teens to enhance self-esteem. So it started in 2017. It's composed usually of 8 weekly sessions, around 8 to 10 teens that we invite. This is actually one of our money-making programs in the department, which is actually very good. It incorporates basically art-based activities. We encourage other consultants and probably from other institutions that you can come with us. So we have patients with anxiety, ADHD, even other mood disorders, teens. So this is actually very effective. So this is how it works. So they usually form a circle around maximum around 10 to 15 participants. So far, before we usually start, we encourage a pre-screening, so to determine the teens' self-esteem level. So we use the Rosenberg self-esteem scale. So these are the usual means of the scores that they get. So if you see, the highest is usually around 30. If you look at their pre-test, they have a very low range of self-esteem, so ranging as even as low as 8. So this example of a post-test, one of the first group that we ran, so it actually increased to 22. So the program is really very effective. Let me just run you down with how we do it. So the initial phase is usually we just encourage the cohesiveness of the group first, and we explore the baseline self-esteem or self-perceptions of the participants. Where in the middle phase, we explore more of their strengths and weaknesses with the several group activities. And in the termination phase, they integrate what they learned and also explore other social sources of self-esteem after they finish the sessions. So this is one of the activities that we do. So we encourage them to draw about how they see themselves in the circle. So we use a lot of art. And sometimes we also do some icebreakers like what they like about themselves, what they dislike. So we use very Gen Z methods. So they like it. So this is one of the examples that they draw. So these are around 15 years old to 16 years old, average participants. So this is one of one of the participants look at themselves. So these are actually very, in a way, sir, it's very psychodynamic, sir, right? If you interpret all the drawings. And this is one of the good by group card when we evaluate how they assess themselves after the program. So far we got a good feedback. So maybe you can try enrolling some of your patients in the program. So most of the activities they rated as 4 out of 5, very helpful and very conducive to inducing therapy also. And we got a good rating as facilitators around 4/5. So there, we hope you can actually encourage some of your relatives or those having a lot of self-esteem problems in teens. So thank you.
Well, I hope that everybody takes home a new knowledge about group therapy, and I would like to ask the other institutions if you hold some similar activities there. Well, I hope you can start. You are fellows in child psychiatry or residents? Ah, okay. General psychiatry. When I was in training, I used to hold the group therapy for substance addiction patients. Yeah. But I'm happy that now we have the child. Yung substance natin, wala pa rin. Okay, so why don't you start group therapies in your institutions? It's really lucrative, but it's difficult. Okay. Now, maybe we can have lunch before the small group discussion to pay for our lunch.